everybody, it's Gil here with another video on the Pit Boss Pro Series combo pellet smoker and gas grill. In this episode, we're going to talk all about how to clean it and some mistakes I made when I first started using my pellet grill. So I've probably made the mistake of sitting in this couch a little bit too much when I'm not actually smoking meats. And what we've run into here is I've probably done my initial setup and burn in, and then maybe have done 5 or 6 cooks, several of those long, doing either baby back ribs or even a whole brisket. So some of these were 6-7 hour smokes. And I didn't do anything to prepare the grill short of exactly what it says in the actual owner's manual, which is to go ahead and burn it in at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. If you didn't see the video, I'll put a link right up in this corner up here on the first burn in and how to set it up. I'm also going to show you just how caked it was. I did not line my diffuser plate with tin foil. I wanted to keep it the way it was so that I had plenty of, nothing blocking the opening that would allow the flames to shoot through for searing. But over time, all of the drippings from the meat have dripped down where that plate slides back and forth, and it's just jam-packed. It won't slide. So today, we're going to take the whole grill apart. We're going to clean it. I'm going to show you all the steps we go through to clean it. But before we do that, I thought it made sense to show you the tools we're going to go ahead and use. The first thing we're going to use is some nitrile gloves. If you watch any barbecuing channels, you always see people using a nice rubber glove when they're either preparing the meat or pulling it off the grill. These are not heat resistant. However, for cleaning it and for preparing the meat, it's really handy. I'll put a link in the description down below on where you can get these. It's a box of 50 gloves. It costs about $10 to $12. They're thick, 9 mils, which is really thick. Your average, painter's glove you get at a hardware store or something like that's going to be 3, and a heavy duty might be 5 mils. These are 9, so it makes a significant difference. The other tool we're going to use as we go ahead and clean the grill is going to be a simple paint scraper. This is what we're going to use, and we're going to use it for scraping some of the caked up grease off of different surfaces within the grill. The other thing we're going to use is 2 different types of scour pads. Keep in mind, most pellet smokers these days have either a porcelain or ceramic coated set of grill grates. So we don't want to use something metal that's going to scrape that or scratch it. So we're going to use these plastic, for the lack of a better term. I'm using like a 3M Scotch pad right here. I prefer not to use the green color because that's the really heavy duty one. If you can find white or purple, those are a little bit finer, not quite as coarse. And then I'm going to use these plastic sort of scour pads. It's the fake equivalent to a Brillo pad, but I don't want to use the metal for a couple of reasons. First one is that metal can be left on the surface and possibly get in your food. The second reason is, as you're scraping with that metal scour pad, the steel wool or a Brillo, what basically is happening is little pieces of steel could potentially get caught in the surfaces of the porcelain or ceramic, and then over time they rust and they create a pinhole in the surface, and unfortunately that becomes the beginning of the end of the coating on the grates. The other thing we use is some kind of a degreaser. There are all types of degreasers out there. You're going to find some that are very expensive and some that aren't. Every grill manufacturer is going to have theirs they're going to sell you. I don't think there's going to be a significant difference, so I'm using one that costs $1 at the dollar store. So we'll see how that works. All right, so that's the supplies we're going to need as we get started today. So let's talk about preparation. So yesterday we smoked a couple of different things. We did some pork loins and we also grilled some chicken wings. I did not do anything with the grill afterwards. It was just after dark when everything finished. I turned everything off the proper way, turned the temperature dial all the way down, turned off the power button, let it run through its standard cooling process to burn any remaining wood pellets that were in the burn pot. So today it's nice and cool in the grill itself. We're going to go out there and disassemble it. We're going to scrape all the surfaces, which I'll show you all these steps in a few minutes. We'll scrape all the surfaces, and then we're going to go ahead and use a shop vac to actually get out any leftover dust that's down in the bottom of the actual grill from the pellets. I'm really curious to see just how much dust is down there after this amount of smoking. I mentioned the number of times we smoked. In all, I'd guess that it's probably been burning for somewhere in the 21 to 24 hour range across those different grills, maybe even 26. So it gives you an idea on how many sort of grill sessions that was if you just look at total time of actual operation. So we've got the grill right here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around so the light's a little better in it, and I'll zoom in. I'll show you what it looks like before we get started and then each step along the way. I've turned the grill around just so the light's a little bit better. I haven't done anything to it right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'll show you what it looks like before we get started and then every step along the way. First things first, let's get everything opened up. So We're going to start on the gas side here. And you can see it's not horrible, but we definitely have a little bit of buildup. But where it is bad is over here on this side. And when I take these grates off of here, you'll really see what that burner plate looks like down below. So in the beginning of the video, I mentioned these gloves and how handy they are. And again, you can see they're thick, 9 mils thick, but it sure makes a nice way of keeping your hands a little bit cleaner, especially as you start reaching into all this gunk that's down in here. All right, start with the easy stuff. We'll get this grate off of here, along with the one on this side. We'll just set these aside. Now we're going to do the same thing with the actual ceramic coated grates. The nice thing about having grates this small, there's a good chance we're going to be able to do these in our dishwasher. But so I've got my standard non-metallic scraper that I use for the tops of these when I'm done cooking. I'm just doing this to knock off some of the really heavy stuff that's hanging down here. Just get it down into the grill where we're going to clean it anyway. And I think I've mentioned before on this Pit Boss there is a flame searing station, but in order to remove this whole plate, diffuser plate, we've got to remove this bar out of the way. This is the bar that connects into that plate and slides it back and forth. So I'm just going to scrape some of the really heavy stuff off right in here. So you can see just what I mean about how caked this thing is. And you can't even slide this little plate right now. It is so much on there. So I'm just scraping it lightly to get some of the really heavy stuff off of here. And this is just the remnants of those couple of smokes I mentioned. So with it lightly scraped, I'm just going to take this now and remove it right out of here. You can get a sense for just how caked up that is. I'm going to lay that in the grass because I'm going to scrape this thing off out there. So I'm going to take this really heavy stuff, just try and get some of it right in a bag, just so I don't have to get it into the shop vac. So before I shop vac this, I'm just going to scrape the sides of it a little bit. It's actually not very bad, but I figure the shop vac will work a lot better if it's just scraped a little bit. To give you an idea, there's about a ½ inch of ash in the bottom of this burn pot. It's really not bad at all. It's just above the actual element. So this is probably the longest you'd want to go without cleaning it. Some 20, 24 hours of use. If you've used it that much and had it burning, the ashes would probably be built up at least the same way I have. And that's if you're doing all proper startups and shutdowns as I have been. I'm now just going to go ahead and scrape all the edges where the grates sit. There's really not much there, but just to get it nice and clean, I'm just going to do the same thing inside of the actual grease gutter. There's all the grease drips off the flame guard plate this direction, lands in a gutter, goes toward the center, and that's where it drops into the drip bucket. So just scraping this as well. Last thing you want to do is get a problem with grease buildup in here. That could cause a grease fire. We definitely don't want that to happen. And don't get me wrong, pellet stoves are good and safe. You just have to follow a few simple precautions. That's one of them. Be the equivalent of never cleaning your oven at home. So to remove this grease tray over on this side, just lift it up and slide it right out. Now I'm going to be very careful and I move it right away, so I don't want a lot of that falling. You can see it's got a hole right through here, and that's where the grease drips down into the bucket itself. So before I pull the bucket from down below, I'm going to grab the shop vac and we're going to get all this thing vacuumed out, and then we'll degrease it. So there's a better than zero chance she kills me for doing this. Instead of using the shop vac, I'm going to use this one. But the nice thing, it has this easy dump setup, and there's not a whole lot of ash in there. So let's get started. I will save you the boredom of watching me scrub these, but needless to say, it's pretty much like scrubbing any old cast iron pot or something. I stood them up in the sink, I sprayed the degreaser on it, I used those Scotch-Brite style pads. I actually went through 2 of them and just pretty much destroyed them, which I think is fine. At the end of the day, you can buy these things really cheap, you know, 5, 6 of them for $1 or something at a dollar store or even on Amazon. And frankly, you're not going to reuse them anyway after all the grease is on them, so they go right in the trash anyway. It works fine. I also chose not to degrease the inside of it and then spray it out with a hose because I didn't want it all, you know, ending up on the patio here. So I'd spray it with degreaser, scrub it with one of those little plastic Brillo style pads, scouring pads, and then I'd use paper towels and I'd wipe it all out. And the paper towels just caked up with black grease, but threw them all inside. So I've gotten everything cleaned. The sear plate and deflector plate, I scraped that with the putty knife and then used the scouring pad and degreaser and, you know, garden hose outside and got it clean as well. I mentioned at the beginning of this that we want to season this thing, and one of the things I want to do is really season it like a cast iron pot. So you can see it's pretty darn shiny in there. I have coated all of the inside of it with canola oil. You can take a paper towel and sort of dab in that, or use a sprayer. In my case, I just used a paper towel and, you know, put a little on the paper towel and then rubbed it on. You'll see me do that on some of these grates before I put them in. But I've got the inside of both of the drums done and the insides of the doors as well. I don't know if you remember before, I'll see if I have a picture of this. This was completely black and this one was still the brownish color from the original metal. The degreaser worked really good, and that was just the stuff from the dollar store. Now granted, I used a third of the bottle, but you know, again, it was the dollar store, so if every time you clean this thing you're out $3, $3.50, $4, something like that, so be it, right? And I'm hoping that by doing this it makes it a little bit easier to clean, and if I clean it every single time or every other time, it's not as big of an ordeal as it's been today. Honestly, I've been doing this almost an hour and a half now since we started, so it's been kind of a major ordeal, if you will. So let me get the shelf up and we'll start getting stuff in here.
So PitBoss actually sells these little buckets, disposable buckets that fit into your drip pan. They're kind of expensive. I'll put a link in the description down below for these ones that I use. They're so much less expensive. You buy them 5 or 6 in a pack or something like that. Real convenient, easy to use. And then when you're done, you just put it in the bucket and hang it down in the drip pan. As you can see, the sear plate looks a lot cleaner. Just went ahead and scrubbed it, scraped it, and I've completely oiled this whole thing down. And I'll show how I'm going to go ahead and season the rest of the grill as well. As I mentioned earlier, I want to season the inside of this grill a lot like you would season a cast iron pan. So I'm using just a vegetable oil or canola oil on a paper towel, and I'm rubbing it down on everything that sits over a flame. This includes the flame guards on the gas side of the grill, as well as everything that's over on the pellet side, including the actual ceramic coated grates that go on both sides, the top wire rack, as well as the actual flame diffuser that goes over the pellet pot, the burn pot itself. So I realized I actually didn't clean the handle really well, and I don't want to keep touching it with the black soot on it from scraping out the bottom of the grill. So I'm cleaning that up real quick, and then I'm firing up the grill. I want to get it warm. Again, I mentioned I'm seasoning this a lot like you would a cast iron pan or something. So I want it to be about 400 degrees for about 45 minutes or so.
My control panel is showing 385. My thermometer right here is showing right at 500. You can see we've got some good heat going there. This one is showing a whopping 200, because I think I'm almost out of propane on that. I've just got one burner going, so we'll see how well he does. But I don't feel like going and changing the tank, so if that's the case, I'll burn this side in today and that one next time I cook something. I hope you enjoyed this week's video on how to deep clean and season your Pit Boss grill. Again, we're doing this specifically on the Pit Boss Combo pellet smoker and gas grill unit that just came out at the beginning of 2020. But this same process would apply for any pellet smoker you happen to have. I'll let you know in a couple of weeks how well that seasoning worked. We'll do another update video on that, because I do believe seasoning those grates and the inside of the barrels are going to really help with non-stick and future cleanings. I also think every time before I grill something, I'm going to take a paper towel with canola oil on it, and I'm going to rub it on the grates in hopes to reduce anything sticking to them and extend the amount of time between cleanings or simplify the cleaning itself. If you guys enjoyed this video, do me a favor, give it a like and a thumbs up down below the video here on YouTube, and that certainly tells YouTube that this is a video worth watching, and it'll recommend it to other viewers as well. If you haven't seen the other video series about the Pit Boss Combo, I'll put a link right in the upper right-hand corner that shows a link to our playlist for this. It's everything from a two-part on how to assemble a brand new one if you're new to this grill, the first burn-in, and then we have a bunch of different recipes and updates and cooks that we've done in the past, how they've come out, how we did them, and so on. I think you guys will enjoy it. That's not actually the topics of our typical videos, which are all about DIY boat refit and living aboard and cruising on our 51-foot classic sailboat. That's primarily what the video channel's about. Quite frankly, we're about 3-4 months now before we're going to have the boat back sitting right here behind our house, and in the meantime, I'm not doing a whole lot of boat projects, so I've had time to do some grilling, and there's certainly no room for something like this on a classic sailboat. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate you watching. Have a good one. We'll see y'all next time.